Anna's wedding should have been a happy day. As her father, I raised her alone after her mother passed away. But as I stood in the big fancy hall, I felt out of place. Rich and important guests whispered and stared at me. I knew I didn't belong. Then, something shocking happened. Anna, in her beautiful wedding dress, suddenly pulled off her veil. "Dad, let's go home," she said firmly. The room went silent. People gasped. Just as we turned to leave, a loud scream filled the air. Everyone froze in shock. I am Paul, 63 years old. My daughter Anna means everything to me. She was a smart child, always curious. When she was 6, she showed me a drawing of a ballpoint pen she had taken apart. That's when I knew she was special. But our life wasn't easy. Anna's mother, Olivia, died the day she was born. I felt lost, but when I held my baby in my arms, I made a promise. I would protect her, love her, and give her the best life I could, even if I had to do it alone. When Anna told me she was getting married, I was happy. Her fiancé, Adam, seemed like a good man. But something felt off. I never met his parents before the wedding. "It's not important, Dad," Anna said, but I felt uneasy. On the wedding day, my heart sank. On the seating chart next to my name was the label, "Useless middle school graduate." The guests whispered. My hands clenched into fists. I knew someone had done this on purpose. Then a voice behind me laughed, a voice from my past. I turned around and saw James, Adam's father. My heart stopped. I knew him. He was my school rival. Long ago, he always came second to me in class and hated it. Now, here he was, smirking. "Small world, huh?" he said. "The man who ruined my school years is now the father of my son's fiancée." My stomach twisted. James never let go of the past. Before I could speak, he leaned in and said something that made my blood run cold. James smiled cruelly. "Once Anna marries Adam, she will cut ties with you. She'll become part of our family and you will be nothing to her." I felt sick. Before I could react, Adam stepped in. "Dad, stop," he said angrily. Lauren, Adam's mother, sighed. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We're just planning for the best." Anna's face hardened. She turned to James and spoke clearly. "I am not an object to be claimed." Everyone in the room held their breath. Anna looked straight at me. "If being married means losing my dad, then I don't want this wedding." The guests gasped. James's face turned red with anger. "You're making a mistake," he shouted, but Anna stood firm. "No, I'm making the right choice." She took my hand. "Dad, let's go home." I nodded. As we turned to leave, a piercing scream filled the air. I spun around and saw Lauren collapse. She clutched her chest, her face pale. Panic spread through the room. "Somebody help!" Adam shouted. James was frozen in shock. I rushed to Lauren's side. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled. "She's having a stroke," I said. "Call an ambulance now." Adam's face went white. "She said she felt dizzy earlier," he whispered. James grabbed my arm. "Can you save her?" I met his eyes. "If you want her to live, let me do my job." James, for the first time, didn't argue. He just nodded. I focused on keeping Lauren stable. Minutes felt like hours. Then finally, the paramedics arrived. As they rushed her to the hospital, I let out a deep breath. Later that night, Adam called. "She made it through surgery," he said. "If you weren't there..." His voice shook. I sat in silence, thinking. The woman who insulted me, who called me useless, I had just saved her life. Anna sat beside me. "Dad, why didn't you tell me you were a doctor?" she asked. I smiled sadly. "Because my most important job is being your father." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you." I held back my tears. The next day, James called. "Come to the hospital," he said. His voice was softer than before. When I arrived, he sat beside Lauren's hospital bed, his usual arrogance gone. "Thank you," he muttered. It was hard for him to say. I nodded, saying nothing. Then Lauren looked at me. "I knew your wife," she said. I frowned. What? Her eyes softened. Olivia and I trained together in Switzerland. She was the kindest person I ever met. My chest tightened. The past was catching up with me in ways I never expected. As we talked, Adam revealed something shocking. I had an older brother. He died overseas. I listened carefully. He was a doctor in a war zone. He refused to leave, even when it got dangerous. A chill ran down my spine. What was his name? I asked. Adam hesitated. Tyler. My heart stopped. I knew Tyler. He worked with my wife and me, I whispered. Adam's eyes widened. You knew him? I nodded. He saved so many lives. He was a hero. James pulled out an old folded letter from his pocket. His hands shook as he carefully opened it. Tyler wrote this before he died, he said, his voice breaking. The letter was short but powerful. I hope my family finds happiness, love each other, even when it's hard. James's face twisted with emotion. His usual arrogance was gone. Tears ran down his cheeks as he whispered, I wasted so much time trying to be better than others. I wanted to win. But in the end, I lost what truly mattered. I sighed, feeling both sadness and understanding. Days passed and things slowly started to change. James was no longer the proud, cold man I once knew. He spoke less but listened more. Lauren, still recovering, became softer. Anna and Adam focused on their future. One evening, Anna gently touched her stomach and smiled. Dad, the baby just kicked. My heart swelled. Already? I chuckled. Adam placed his hand on hers, his eyes filled with love. We're going to be parents soon, he said proudly. Watching them, I realized this was happiness, not money, not status, just family, love, and a future filled with hope. One afternoon, James called me. I'd like you to come with me to visit Tyler's grave. His voice was quiet, but sincere. I agreed. When we arrived at the cemetery, it was peaceful. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the trees. James knelt in front of the grave, his eyes filled with regret. I never told him how proud I was, he admitted. I placed a small flower on the stone. He knew, I said. James wiped his eyes. Thank you, Paul, for everything. It was the first time he ever said my name with respect. Life slowly returned to normal, but it was different in a good way. James no longer saw me as a rival. We weren't best friends, but we understood each other. Lauren recovered fully and even invited Anna and me for dinner. I was wrong about you, she admitted. I'm sorry. I smiled. As long as Anna and Adam are happy, nothing else matters. And they were. Anna, glowing with pregnancy, laughed more. Adam was always by her side. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. My daughter was happy, and that was all I ever wanted. One evening, as I sat outside, I looked up at the sky. It was completely clear, no clouds, just a bright blue stretch above me. It reminded me of Tyler's letter, of Olivia's dream to help people, of everything we had been through. I smiled. They would be proud of us. Anna stepped out onto the porch. What are you thinking about, Dad? She asked. I took a deep breath. Just about how lucky I am. She leaned against my shoulder, her warmth comforting. We're the lucky ones, Dad, because we have you. My eyes watered, but I just nodded. A few months later, Anna and Adam welcomed their baby, a beautiful baby boy. The first time I held him, he grabbed my finger with his tiny hand, just like Anna had done when she was a newborn. I felt a rush of emotions. What's his name? I asked. Anna smiled. We named him Tyler. My breath hitched. I looked at James, who was holding back tears. This was it. This was the future. No more fighting, no more regrets. Just love, family, and new beginnings. As I held my grandson, I whispered, Welcome to the